SciVive Chapter 10, Longevity. Understanding and visualizing the chain of life. You can visualize getting older and not dying as being like a chain. Each link in the chain is a different critical component to living. For this analogy to work, think of each different component as a link, and as soon as one breaks, you die. The act of getting really old and not dying is basically a chain where every single link stretches to its breaking point at the same time. You die earlier if one link gets stronger while the others get weaker. The weaker one amplifies the rate the chain fails at. It may also fail without a link getting stronger. It just helps the weak one to fail faster when it's surrounded by other strong ones, because it increases the rate the chain must stretch at, for nothing else is stretching to absorb force. Thus, the analogy is great, but the chain needs to be made of different systems: circulatory, breathing, mental, etc., instead of nearly identical systems. Stupid sayings. We're all born to die. Oh yeah? Well, life could surely be a lot shorter then, eh? Seems like we're born to live. Why else would we keep living longer and longer? Maybe we've been given the tools to help ourselves, and we need only employ them. A cautionary tale. You won't have the problem of a 200-year-old man for at least 80 years, so don't worry about it. In 80 years, we'll have more than enough resources to handle a cool 200-year-old dude. In ancient Greek mythology, Tithonus was granted eternal life, but not eternal youth. So when he got old, he just stayed old, getting progressively weaker. Eventually, he spent his days begging to die. As Homer wrote, "But when loathsome old age pressed full upon him, and he could not move nor lift his limbs, this seemed to her in her heart the best counsel. She laid him in a room, and put to the shining doors. There he babbles endlessly, and no more has strength at all, such as once he had in his supple limbs." Imagine you stopped aging right this minute, and your body was locked in time, age-wise. Now you're offered to choose how many years you want to live at your current age, and you'll die the moment you hit the target you write. You're also given 20 free passes to hand out to anyone you wish to give them the same chance. The catch is, you must write it down within the next minute, or you will drop dead on the spot. What do you write? Bill Gates is scared of a longer life. Literally, he admitted it, saying, "If I had the right to live a much longer life, I might not use it. The world would be scary." A book called The Post-Mortal covers all the bad things that can happen if we all become immortal. Know your enemy. If you look above you in your family tree, you will see that 8 out of all the 10 people above you that are no longer alive are likely to have been killed by the same 2 things: cancer and heart disease. Guess what this means for you? It means you have about an 80% chance of dying of a heart attack or cancer as well. Is it wise of you to hope that someone else saves your life? Should you leave your fate and the fate of your loved ones and offspring to the chance that someone else works to find a cure for that which is definitely coming to steal away all that is important to you? The days of living with our heads in the sand and hoping that someone else cures our ailments for us are over. It is time now to take our destinies in our own hands and mold our futures in that which we are worthy of. The Grim Reaper is brandishing his scythe in plain view, and he's coming for you. He's coming to chop off your head and the heads of everyone you love and all your offspring. He's coming to kill all of you, and you're doing nothing to stop him. The more you mess around with this silliness of accepting the values of long dead people who lost the game, the more likely you are to share their fate. They left a book that is poorly written, There's got to be something better than this. Towards life. Some people are giving nothing to the future. When you diet and exercise, you only help yourself. Nothing you're doing there is helping anyone else. When you build medical technology, you not only help yourself, you help all the humans that will ever exist in the future. If you focus on the problems of today, you earn the right to solve the problems of tomorrow. Futurism is more harmful than good. Nanobots are garbage. We already have a godlike nanobot called the white blood cell. Reprogramming our cells will outperform real nanobots for the next 100 years. If you had a longer life, you'd sure be able to make some mistakes and correct them before the end. What would a generous God give his children? If you were a god and could improve human lives in any way you could dream, what might you do? First of all, you could prevent bodies from aging. There's no reason to have these nice people that we've worked so hard to create rotting away from birth on their way to a relatively quick and painful disappearance. This planet we live on is the only one we know of in the entire universe that has the spark of consciousness on it. The flame is worth carrying on. The topic of aging is not popular. Richard volunteered to help create a video for the SENS Foundation, founded by Aubrey de Grey. Aubrey is a tall guy with such a long beard almost to the floor, who used to say that there were 2 reasons he kept doing this work. The first is that no one wants to hear about the problems of aging people, and the second was his wife. She was an American fruit fly geneticist at the University of Cambridge. They divorced in 2017. She was born in 1944, he in 1963. Richard has heard Aubrey say, "I predict that the first person to live to 150 is probably already in middle age." Longevity strategy at the family level. Just think about it. Use logic. If you care about your family's survival, which you obviously do, you should choose to implement a strategy at the family level. Would you divide your family in 2 equal halves and send one half to live on another side of the world and leave the rest here? In this case, if one half of the world dies, the other half gets to live. But you don't see anyone doing this because it's terrible. You would rather take the risk of having your entire family living close by and enjoying the time you have with your loved ones. The idea of dividing a family, set of friends, or the entirety of humanity and sending half of them to live on another planet just because we don't want to focus on one specific issue is horrifying. Hence, if one is not happy creating a strategy at the family level, one is not happy doing it at all. For example, one may not be so happy to die earlier because we want to move to another planet. Some may wish Elon Musk had done a little bit differently there, but he's a massive hero. We need more of those types of people. He really thought he was going to fail. He's like, "Yeah, man, I thought SpaceX was totally going to fail." But it's so important that someone had to try it. Hero! Clap! Amazing, right? Improving focus in health. We are misguided, and we don't need to be. We can focus on aspects of life that are better. We can make improvements. We can reallocate funding. Here is a trivia question that everyone fails. Everybody. Be prepared to answer incorrectly. Have you heard of cancer? It kills a lot of people. What percentage of people die from cancer? Every 6th death in the world is due to cancer, making it the 2nd leading cause of death. SciVive will tell you, as an axiom that you can use to answer this question, that 40% of people die from cancer. 40% of people die from cancer, another 40% die from heart disease, which is basically heart attacks. That's 80%. When you see people researching cancer or heart disease, they're making a good decision in that those 2 things kill almost everybody, and everything else is very small in comparison. Everything else fits in a 20% window. Away from death. We focus on trivial things too often. You can almost look at life as war because conflict is pre-programmed in our brains to refine our focus, and our focus needs refining. Search in any bookstore for books to help you fight the battle against the guy that's coming to kill you, Mr. Cancer or Mr. Heart Disease. There are not many. Maybe there's a business magazine that helps you invest in a company that maybe ends up curing what you are going to have a problem with. The vast majority of these other things are just quality of life hacks, and we are well into diminishing returns in quality of life. Visualize how important every day is and how few you have. Imagine a situation where one's grandparents have all passed away. It's not awesome. If one wanted to call one's grandpa right now, he's dead. Can't call him. He was a nice guy, a smart guy, but now he's gone forever. Now imagine that you could have done something to prevent it. Would you ask yourself, did I do anything to help him at all? A single action? No? Watched him die. Okay, could I have done something? Yeah, probably could have done something. Do you want to maybe do something before your dad dies? Would that work for you? Or how about yourself? Would you do it for yourself? When does a person really die? The dream of being able to capture your own destiny and use science and progress to capture your own personal power and well-being, it just dies with a whimper. That's incredibly sad, common, and a tragedy. How many people are sitting in old folks' homes right now that no one cares about? That is also a tragedy of immense proportions. There was a time when those people had meaning. There was a time when those people had opportunity, power, vibrancy, life, and attractiveness. When do they really die? Is it when their heart stops, the brain stops, or when they stop caring? Or do they die when we stop caring? Steve Jobs failed. Don't be so busy with today that you lose tomorrow. Steve Jobs died from the exact same disease that his father died from, and died 11 years younger than his father was. And if you didn't know exactly what killed your father would be likely to kill you, then you've been living in the land of diversion. He fought the hardest that he could at the end to try and survive, and he failed. One cannot shove 20 years of research and progress into the last 3 months of your life. Steve Jobs was respected by many, yet, if you are reading this book right now, you are kicking his ass. The decisions you made were better than the decisions he made. He is the loser, and you are the winner, because you would not trade places with Mr. Jobs today if offered the chance. In the old days, if you tried to find the fountain of youth, you would be thought insane, and it's likely you might have been. The world we live in today, the technical world, has very little in common with the world our emotions evolved in. It might be quite useful to coin the term die like Steve Jobs, or DLSJ, because it really pins the point on how you could be the most successful or smartest dude around and still die from some boring crap because the tech didn't exist to save you. Moral participation and responsibility. There is a fine line between curing and promoting. How similar is not saving to killing? How similar is not curing to promoting pain? It's a fallacy that humans look for intention and human motivation or action, which is the reason they have such a hard time understanding the similarity between not doing and doing. If you see a man choking to death on the street and you just walk on by, and the man dies, then to a certain degree, you are responsible. It's our constant linear forward progression through time that makes it hard for us to see. Here in this world, there's a dead guy, and there in that world, he's alive. The difference between the dead guy and the living guy is your action. The person doing the action is some other conscious actor that we have to manipulate, and we don't want people to get used to us doing the right action and expect it Take responsibility. No one else is going to do it. If you think someone else is going to solve it and you're overly positive, you don't do anything. If you're overly negative, you think it's unsolvable and you still don't do anything. Or you can stop being discouraged and do something about it. Write a book about it. Put an ad in an in-flight magazine. Do some talk shows or volunteer to do a video. You can do something, right? We are at the time where we do not have to pretend that there's nothing that can be done. There are things that can be done. And as Silicon Valley tech billionaire Peter Thiel said, they're underfunded. No one cares about them. Poor Aubrey de Grey has been giving talks on TED and at Google, and no one believes him. The listeners are just thinking, crazy guy, death is cool. Make people feel responsible. Inaction is an action. Someone may be talking about a loved one by saying, he's got a 15% chance every year of developing an ailment, but that's really just what aging is. Except you didn't cause it and therefore people don't feel responsible for it. But that's the only way to shock them into understanding that inaction is similar to causation. Focus on what's important. Perhaps your grandparents all died already. Perhaps you did nothing to help them. The same fate may soon be shared by your parents, and maybe you've done little to help them survive longer as well. Scientists should work on helping their family and loved ones survive with medical tech instead of spending time fiddling with AI or space travel. It's fun to dream about the stars while you're sinking into the quicksand. Save your own life. SciVive suggests you use your newfound wealth to play in the biotech space. You might save your own life. Death versus pain and discomfort. Maybe you shouldn't really care about death as much as you should pain and discomfort. You should really care about doing the best you can do to alleviate the latter. Growing old is scary. Ever notice that constant look of horror some elders have? Maybe it's just the way gravity affects the very old. Or maybe getting old is terrifying. The inevitable day, you will need help. If you're able to afford the inventions when they come, then what you need to do is pray, beg, try, preach, pay, lobby, and hope that these things are there when you need them. You will need them. You, personally, will need help. There will be a day when your body decides it doesn't want to play anymore. You are not going to like that day. Or even worse, you die without trying to fight it. Your testosterone diminishes, and you start to care less about things. It's harder to make friends. Your social circle gets smaller. You end up in a home somewhere, forgotten about. Media. It might be kind of powerful to make videos about really old people dying or having any of the diseases of old age. You could interview them and ask them questions like, how do you feel about dying and death? If you had a choice, would you want to live longer? There's a video where a U.S. Air Force captain, a pilot, ejected out of an F-15, moving at supersonic speed. The force of the wind almost tore off his limbs. He was floating on the ocean over which he had flown, hanging on to a little raft for dear life, thinking, this is it. I'm going to die. His determination to not leave his family, wife and kids in trouble, living a life without him, propelled him to fight for survival. Why then would we not have that same feeling on our deathbeds? Why do we need to accept that inevitable destiny? Richard once told a woman he dated that if he had unlimited funding, he'd pursue ending aging. She said, well, if that's what you want to do with the limited time we have here. Now, to him, ending aging is a pretty worthwhile goal and acceptable use of his limited time here. The perception that we don't have a choice about dying can be changed. We can fight it. If we show what the dying looks and feels like through the experiences of some seniors going through the process, maybe we can get them to open up about how scary death is and how they don't want to die, even by natural means, aging. Then maybe we can change people's view about the inevitability of dying and aging. Suggest a path. The current low-hanging fruit in longevity technology is marketing and outreach. For the same reason that Bill Gates and others offer matching funds, convincing others to do what is right has good force multiplication. The scope of keeping humans robust enough to survive damage and improve is so wide that it might be the hardest problem we've ever faced. This is great because human consciousness is the rarest and most valuable commodity in the universe, especially yours and mine. So the expected value of the trade is quite good, even if it's a hard task. Directly attacking the pro-death mindset that so many people have has been proven unfruitful by anyone that's tried it recently. Thus, SciVive suggests a more sex, drugs, and rock and roll approach. Give them the hedonism they want and should want, and then pivot into the correct actions intelligent, emotionally fulfilled people tend to desire. In this case, rejuvenation technology. The first step to scale is to convince people their own lives are worth saving, and they can be saved. Skipping the outreach and directly funding research, as SENS does with the Buck Institute, for instance, isn't as good an idea. For SENS takes in less than a few $1 million per year, and the potential for investment in the space is several orders of magnitude larger. Their pitch just doesn't seem to resonate, so it's time for a better pitch. A person's donations should both feel great giving and have a real-world, measurable effect that is significant. Thus, no two donations have the same meaning to them. Choose your image. Hide your desire to live, or just come out with it and hear lots of nonsense about it from the mal-informed. SciVive does not want to push an agenda, but if it helps people live a couple years longer, it'd be worth it. SciVive hopes to get the job done by just being straight up and telling people that living longer would be cool. For some reason, you're hypnotized to think it would be terrible, and if you lived a couple years longer, the whole world would explode. But it would actually be all right. This is a lot like atheism. If you're truthful about it, depending on where you live and your circumstances, you may be killed for your honesty. For instance, if you were a Muslim and then you say there's no God, yeah, the death penalty is prescribed. Being a SciViver should pay you enough profit to eat the slings and arrows of outrageous idiots in most places. Staying alive / risk management. Acts of God and sinkholes. The earth literally opened up and swallowed a sleeping man while his brother was in the other room. SciVive can't imagine that this could be considered fair when, if you're unlucky enough to live in Florida, the earth may just randomly swallow you without warning. Might it be affordable to seismic scan all the earth under these homes? You might want to avoid Hillsborough County, Florida, because it accounts for 2/3 of the insurance claims for sinkholes in the state. What's a limb worth? When you lose a limb, you get paid by your state's workers' compensation program, and the amount you get paid varies widely not only by the state that you live in, but also by which limb you lost. Transportation. Sitting backwards in a plane. You could have a safer car. You could check out the local laws on what type of lights you can have on your car. You can change the streets you drive on. You can change your orientation on the car. You could have a driver. You could sit in the back. You could even reverse your seat. Drive the safest car at the safest times, on the safest roads, to the safest places. Or better yet, just already be there. Turns out that sitting backwards in an airplane is 10 times safer than sitting facing forward. According to an article in the December 1952 edition of Naval Aviation News, passengers in Navy transport planes have tenfold better chances of coming out of crashes alive, thanks to backward-facing seats, which are being installed in all new planes. The Navy has decided to install the seats after 5 years of development and testing showed they gave passengers much more protection for the entire back, neck, head, and parts of the arms and legs in sudden stoppages. The human body can absorb more shock by the back than by the chest and abdomen, flight surgeons say. Emergencies. There are tricks such as, if you're getting raped, don't yell rape, yell fire instead. This is because people are more likely to respond to fire. What a weird world we live in. The reason SciVive mentions this is that we are all in that same game. Death is coming for you, for everyone that you love, and someone needs to be the guy to yell fire, not death. And here, Richard has got to be the guy that points directly at you through this book of science and survival, through his words, directly in your face, to tell you that you need to save your own life. Distance is the best defense. Some people's pre-programmed responses to interactions are better and worse, right? If you visualize a punch coming at you, you want to duck it and counterstrike. That's the natural response to when you see a punch coming. If you are carrying a weapon and see some other dude pull up, you may want to pull out your weapon, right? In certain environments, that's good, while in other environments, that's bad. If you're outgunned and there are 10 of them and there's one of you, maybe you shouldn't draw. If you're up against a dude that's a martial artist, who's 10 times better than you, or he has friends alongside, or you're drunk, maybe you should just walk away. Your pre-programmed responses need to exist because there's so much profit in acting quickly in so many situations. However, only after you can make sure that you're accurately applying the correct strategy, or you have a broad enough range of quick responses, are you more likely to execute the quick one. This isn't something that happens often. These are violent and ultimately rare. Some choose to live in the safest place in the world. These people have had enough of the areas where people pull guns on each other. They have had enough of that violent lifestyle, getting jumped, threatened, or mace sprayed. There's no profit in it. Positional awareness. Be near the exit and know where all the exits are. If you smell smoke, get out and then tell someone. Don't tell people until you know it won't limit you and your loved one's ability to escape. Nightclub fires happen and they're horrible. It's very hard to shoot a moving target, so at a distance, consider running instead of complying with demands. Sit with your back to a wall so you can see who's coming in the door. Avoid large groups of men. Avoid situations known to get out of hand. There are no spectators in a riot. Your team. Share your location with friends before you go out. If you split up, declare what you'll each do in case you can't find each other at the time you agree to meet back up. Don't loiter in dangerous neighborhoods. Realize that bad things happen to everyone. No one is immune to the probabilities. Your cell phone might have an option that under duress it will contact people you list. Beware while answering the door. If people come to your house asking if you have an alarm, the answer is always yes. Perhaps you shouldn't be answering the door at all, really. If you don't answer your door, you can't be served with a subpoena or punched in the face. Wearing body armor is difficult. Have you ever worn body armor? Do you know how hot and heavy it is? You'll sweat. The point is, there are some things in life that need to be faster than thought, and those things you should train to improve. Better than training is controlling your own environment. You don't need to be in places where bad things tend to happen. Everybody knows training exists, and that's great. What SciVive wants to share with you is that there are some things for which you can train, and there are some things that you can't, and you need to know the difference. Arguments against eternal life. Fairness. Argument. Only rich people will get it. Counter. No tech has ever done this. Argument. Better to give money to the poor than science. Counter. Family, city, state, nation has proven local investment beats foreign. Bad for society. Argument. Dead people make more room for new other people. Counter. Consider going first. Argument. We will run out of resources. Counter. Live people discover, extract, and renew better than dead or non-existent people. Argument. Overpopulation. Counter. Colonize the seas, solar system, or have a war. Argument. Wars will be worse. Counter. Nukes are more dangerous than having your first 220-year-old person in 2136. Argument. Dictators never die. Counter. They die all the time and rarely of age. Argument. Old people are expensive. Counter. 50% of your lifetime medical costs occur in your final year. Delay is profitable. Argument. Old people suck. Counter. Death is an inferior cure to robustness. Bad for the individual. Argument. You'll get bored. Counter. Your memory isn't that good, or your boredom isn't age-related. Argument. You'll have to watch your loved ones die. Counter. So you prefer they watch you? Argument. Like Ch.10, you'll live forever in a terrible state. Counter. Longevity requires robustness. Argument. It's against God's will. Counter. Not if he disallows suicide. Then it is required. Do you think less people make progress faster? What's your target level of depriving life of existence? How do you plan to keep mankind robust from extinction events on a single planet? You might just need more people. What do you think our technology would look like if we had 10x less people for the last 100 years? A complete and honest representation of people's concerns is beneficial to all parties. Curing aging isn't immortality. The reason no one cares about medical research now is because many figure that life will just gradually suck before they die, and that they'll be happy to die. Staying alive is 100 times more expensive if you're old. Biology. Energy maintenance theory of aging. A high-energy molecule present in every cell, adenosine triphosphate, ATP, is the form of stored energy used to accomplish much of a cell's activities. A theory of aging, published in the journal Bioessays, addressed the link between ATP levels and aging based on broad research, showing that stored energy levels decrease substantially as animals age. It has to do with mitochondria, which generate the majority of ATP in the cell. They can fuse together to become larger or fragment to become smaller. Fragmented mitochondria are less efficient at generating ATP, while larger mitochondria generate ATP more efficiently. The theory basically states that the more you eat and the faster you operate, the more damage you accumulate as a function of metabolism. There are some problems with it, because whales seem to do pretty well for the gigantic amount of food that they eat. The Wellcome Collection Museum in London gives visitors a unique insight into what it means to be human. Many collections are nothing short of bizarre, from a Peruvian mummified man to a robot used in the Human Genome Project. One exhibit there shows a relationship between longevity and heart rate that was discovered. Fighting the good fight. Time the breakthroughs to appear when you need them. If you're in your 30s, then you should want tons of research, even at the cost of application, so that the maximum payoff from their efforts kicks in right when your health is deteriorating. If, however, you're already in pretty poor health right now, you may be happier with getting a better doctor or facility which can more properly diagnose, administer, and track application of the current state of the art tactics on you. You must act early. You can't shove 20 years of research and progress into the last 3 months of your life. You probably agree that you would love to see medicine kicking maximum ass when you need it. In the meantime, try to keep out of the path of runaway trains and angry alligators. Peter Thiel's 3 attitudes towards death. Peter Thiel says that you have 3 options when contemplating death. 1. You can simply accept it, thinking that it's unavoidable. 2. You can care, but not believe that you can do anything about it. 3. You can choose to fight, which is the choice Thiel makes. The breakthrough. How valuable is your future? If your future is important enough to save for, it's important enough to be around for. If your future is worth saving, it's worth SciViving for. Do you save money? Do you have a savings account? If you are saving for the future, so that at some day in the future you can have more money because it provides safety, then okay, one would say that's a very common behavior. One would say that's a positive behavior. It reduces the volatility in one's finances. It's important. It turns out that dying is probably more common than going broke. The chance that you will die is a lot more likely than the chance that you'll go bankrupt. If some new technology comes around, you need to be able to afford it. You cannot fund it to the degree that you exclude yourself from using it by donating so much money to research that you can't afford the outcome of the research. That's probably a bad decision. Getting rich on health. If you have a choice to buy stock in a company that heals people instead of hurting people, as in weapons versus biotech, biotech could be better because there's never been less war and there have never been more people. The biotech sector is going to outperform the weapons sector. Fund the future, setting aside 10%. If you can put away 10% of your income for future spending, you can surely put 10% away for your being alive to spend it. Invest in your future, your real living future, not just your financial future. How many could comfortably contribute 10% to increase their longevity? How many people could comfortably take out 10% of the money they make? If you can put 10% of your money away for savings, you can allocate 5% of it away for survival and join the 5% club that believes in the future through science. The concept of putting away 10% of your earnings is a commonly used number for 2 things: personal finance and tithing, which is giving money to your religion. Who does that? Mormons, Scientologists, and probably other people. Okay, if you're putting 10% of your money away so it exists when you're dead, you may want to change your ratios up a little bit and maybe put 5% of your money away and put 5% into being alive to spend it. What do we need? What do we need? We need more human beings doing more intelligent things that benefit other people. We need more people acting in their own best interests. We need more people to understand what their own best interests are, which means less complacency, less cowardice, and more correct, heroic, honorable action. If you want to become a scientist and you want to get into biology and biotech, great. If you've got money and you're saving your money for the future, but you're not saving your health for the future, you're doing it wrong. Science and technology. If you believe that science and technology can resolve most human sufferings, and if you believe that science and technology are mandatory components of our species' survival, so we will not become extinct like 99.8% or more of every species that has ever existed on this planet, it is worth believing in SciVive theory core. There are much worse things in the world that people consider to be their values. They believe in certain social systems that have different names: Marxism, communism, and Christianity. These isms and idies are certain belief systems that can do good and evil. Understanding them has its benefits, even more when they produce some good lessons that we can learn. Investing in science will save you. Only science is going to save your life. Scientists need funding so they can eat and buy cool machines. But let's say you're worried, because you're greedy, that when you buy a stock in a scientific company, that it's going to go down and cause you to take a financial loss. The price of the stock going down only matters if you are going to sell. And if you sell, how are they supposed to do any of the science that they need to do in order to save your life decades from now? In effect, if you buy stock in a company that may eventually save your life through one of the cool products they make, then if the price drops in half, it doesn't matter. Whatever investment you put into that company, they utilized it to do good. Now you have to cancel out the effect of other people selling their stock by definitely not selling yours, or even purchasing more stock so they can continue to have the funding necessary to keep working, producing, and discovering miracles. In effect, if you really do want to save your life by investing in biotech, you need to never sell your stock. And if, in fact, you're never going to sell your stock anyway, it almost doesn't matter what happens to the share price. Specific health-directed funding. Let's say you're a gay man and you care about saving you and your loved one. Wouldn't it be great if you could donate to prostate cancer? It's going to pay off better than breast cancer because both you and your partner are 80 times more likely to get prostate cancer than breast cancer. Save the Humans Fund. A donation has been made under your name to the Humans Fund. What? Why do we have a Save Your Trees Global Awareness Fund, but we don't have a Save the Humans Global Awareness Fund? Humans matter more than trees. If we care enough about trees to try and save them, we should care about the humans. So we need a Save the Humans Fund. Invest in problem solvers who solve for millions in health. So imagine it's the year 1980, and you thought, I really wish there was some kind of software that I could put in my computer that would let me run everything simply. It would talk to the printer, let me play games, use the internet, and run any software I wanted to. I don't want a mainframe that has to have specially designed software that runs on it. I want a general purpose, personal computer, and I want some software that will let me do that. I wonder if there are companies that are out there building that. Wait, there already are. Microsoft and Apple. I should invest in one of those companies because if it works, I'm going to get really rich. Plus, I'll be able to actually use what they built. Now imagine you had that logic then, before Microsoft was huge, and imagine how rich you'd be. You'd be very rich. Why? Because you invested in something that solved a personal problem for you, that also solved a problem for billions of other people. What better industry could you invest in? That is what SciVive suggests you do with health technology. Making billions isn't as good as amplifying the sector. If you happen to create a unicorn, startups with valuations of over $1 billion, and cash out $1 billion, you are still better off convincing people to build the tech to save their own lives, rather than use the extra money to try and buy your way to health. What is worth investing your time and money? You really can't avoid that question. If you didn't make that determination, then you at least have to make the statement that certain things that we spend money on pay off better than others. If you want to help the general populace, you need to stop caring about global warming and start caring about mosquitoes and water. Once mosquitoes and water and some other low-hanging issues are fixed, then you can start focusing on other things that matter less. They matter less. And all this is fun and games until we get hit by a meteor and we all die, right? Maybe we should be looking at those extinction level events as well. Extinction level events. Lots of animals go extinct every day. We don't want to be one of them. Put all your eggs in one basket and watch that basket very carefully. Whom does the interplanetary resource allocation benefit? Resources allocated to interplanetary redundancy enhance the survival of the people over there, at the cost of you being more likely to die here. It is likely we prefer to amplify the chance that we and our loved ones survived, instead of splitting fours at the blackjack table. Also, you shouldn't be sitting at the blackjack table. Awareness. What people will pay for and are willing to work at dictates the world we live in. Let's say you could flip a switch and turn everyone in the world into a doctor. Now you have more people who excel at fixing others and a little more research in the sciences and projects that future doctors would have relied on. There needs to be a healthy ratio of application and research. We are so very far away from a healthy weighting amongst these things that improvements can be easily had. For example, if we assume that the humans in the world we live in do what they do because they choose to, which is more or less the idea behind abolishing slavery, then we can infer that what humans do is a function of what humans want to do. The question then becomes, how healthy and useful is what humans currently and are likely to want in the near future compared to what's possible? If you were forced to make a list of the multifarious ways humans waste their time, you'd probably die with hands crippled from the effort long before the task was complete. Increase the awareness. People do what they care about. Most people care about what they are very well advertised to care about, and things they already have a natural emotional propensity to develop a caring for. That competitive, I'd prefer that they die instead of me kind of feeling we have comes so rarely in life because we lead such a life of leisure. That's part of the reason that sport is so popular. You can experience those same emotions of, this is really important and I have to win. But the funny thing is that it's just a construction. You are constructing something that you can think is important so that you can feel those once more common feelings. That's the purpose of a haunted ride attraction or a scary movie, to trigger some emotions that you rarely get to feel. SciVive wants to evolve the framework to bring out the light that will unhide what no one is noticing or paying attention to. This menace that comes and kills us in our sleep as we are enjoying our lives. You never read the same book twice. The idea of never reading the same book twice is a cool idea. It's similar to never stepping in the same river twice. Maybe you have seen the same movie twice and thought, oh, I didn't notice many of the small elements the first time around. I'm a different person. If you're not old enough to have watched a movie and then re-watched it as though it were new and noticed a million new things, you might not yet truly understand how much a person changes. Maybe you would have to interview someone who hates their old tattoo of, for example, Nickelback. Maybe then you could understand what it's like to truly change in taste. SciVive agrees with the American philosopher, writer, and cognitive scientist Daniel Dennett on a lot of topics, particularly the theoretical hard problem of consciousness and his position on free will. Many neuroscientists are trying to say that human beings don't really have free will because they can measure our brains and know what we're going to do before we do it. One could counter by thinking, that's great, but I've been with myself for longer than you've put that machine on me, so I have the chance to meta-influence. Even if you could predict what I was going to do before I did it, I've had the chance to meta-influence the directionality of my decision-making for a longer period of time, so that perhaps while I don't have infinite power to control what I'm doing in the microseconds before you, after you measure and you can predict it, I did hours ago. Technology. Transhumanism. Transhumanism is a philosophical movement that advocates for the transformation of the human condition by developing and making widely available sophisticated technologies to greatly enhance human intellect and physiology. Transhumanists have a time frame problem. They're very concerned with the opportunities and problems of people who are not going to affect them. You must earn the right to be around to face those future challenges. As it stands, just like nearly all of the futurists of the past, they're dead. They don't get to see all the robots, flying cars, and shiny clothes of 2017. If you like nanobots, try your hand at the white blood cell. It's pretty great at what it does. You'll get farther hacking it than trying to build your own nanobot version. Same for trees. Pick up where nature left off. Nature's already done a pretty great job over the very long time it has had. Imagine the difficulty of building an artificial but very alive tree compared to the efficiency of planting more of nature's already provided methods. Build the future you wish to see. Biotech, the life you save may be your own. Transhumanists are to progress what moviegoers are to filmmaking. Spectators. Mind uploading. Whole brain emulation, WBE. Mind upload or brain upload, sometimes called mind copying or mind transfer, is the hypothetical, futuristic process of scanning the mental state, including long-term memory and self, of a particular brain substrate and copying it to a computer. Mind uploading won't work. The memory isn't in the meat, it is the meat. The reason mind uploading will not work is that human memory can't be extracted from the substrate, the physical meat. If you could, you would probably cease to be you. A way to understand this is the experiment in evolutionary circuitry, where they let code edit and evolve itself to hear and identify two different tones. And after a couple thousand iterations, it did a really good job at it. And the time came to find out how the chip evolved to do the task. It turns out they couldn't figure it out. Removing unused pieces of code broke it, and moving it to a different chip broke it. It was using things that we don't know how to use. They theorized it had to do with threshold voltages, and that the very specific entropy and uniqueness of that individual chip was basically the epigenetics that wouldn't allow it to be transferred to another chip. Additionally, digital security is a competition, and whoever has more money wins. If your brain becomes data, you will be hacked. Or perhaps there's so many copies of you, you don't mind losing a few. The good news is, as long as the meat is the data, there shall be no mind uploading, so you don't have to worry about digital OPSEC. Profit cuts through bullshit. Many things that waste people's time have been the result of building things at great expense that people didn't truly want and definitely wouldn't pay for. Charging for things is the universal decision maker. If what you are doing is awesome, you can charge for it. You should charge for it. An interesting saying is, never do what you're good at for free. You don't have to be charitable. You do have to focus on solving the problem, even for profit. You don't have to figure out what's best. You do have to allocate 5%. Take 5% of your gross income as revenue. Find alternatives to allow parallel investment if they don't like you, profit if they don't like charities, and give them a list of profit-seeking startups who, if successful, further our cause. As for the government, give them a list of low-hanging fruit that can be side-channel marketed without the longevity conversation battle. If 80% of medical costs occur in the last year of life, let's just move that last year as far away as possible. Example, diabetes research through SIRT pathways, sirtuin signaling pathway cascade, results in massive side benefits are likely. Curing things. As an exercise to understand how important it is to cure diseases, imagine a world where many diseases exist in various forms. Now imagine that you had the chance to cure them all, and you did it 20 years earlier. Now it's hard to imagine how important it is, because you didn't have a chance to see how bad it used to be. You have to imagine the way the world could be, but isn't, due to lack of work in the right fields. Take that same lesson and apply it to how the world could be, but must not be because of your hard work. A great reason to cure a disease is that you would not have to treat it anymore, and you don't have to consume other people's lives with the treatment. The majority of the costs involved with taking care of old people are the human costs. It takes more than one person to take care of one person, so you have a problem that's very hard to solve. This is the reason why it might be more effective to cripple an enemy soldier than to kill one, because you are technically disabling more than one enemy unit with the injury, whereas with the death, you are only getting rid of one. However, you would have to account for the return to battle one day in the future of the not dead soldier, so you could consider it a short-term gain with a long-term cost. Serendipity and the law of attraction. When you use Google, it gives you popular responses. When you get the results that are on Google, the things that are referenced are popular things that people are aware of. Due to this compounding popularity, there's the likelihood that one unrelated thing is seemingly attached to some other unrelated thing, and you find them actually related. This is because that relation is a side effect being directed through you by a third outside cause. It's not because the two things were actually pushing on each other. It's not the world trying to fulfill your goals and your destinies because you've been looking at your dream board. It's a side effect of you creating the dream board because you were influenced. A better example may be, if you are reading the news and you hear about Islamic terror, then you see an image that says that a possible solution to this is to taint the methods of executing people guilty of executable crimes. The theory is that if these people are willing to kill for their beliefs, and their beliefs say that you're strictly punished if you are convicted of any crimes, you may be able to use people's beliefs that you may consider to be crazy beliefs, however, they may feel are quite rational. You may be able to use their beliefs in order to enhance the likelihood that they remain lawful and don't commit crimes, particularly crimes that have death penalties attached to them in many societies. Richard James Hart and General John Blackjack Pershing. Richard James Hart turned out to be a hidden secret older brother of Al Capone. His name was actually James Vincenzo Capone, and he was born not in the United States, but in Naples, Italy, in 1892. Al Capone was an alcohol smuggler, and his older brother, Richard James Hart, was actually an anti-alcohol smuggler who put guys like that in jail. One of the claims to fame that Two Guns Richard James Hart has is that he was commended by General John Blackjack Pershing for the good performance he had in war. It was just interesting that you find a legend of a man over here And then only hours later, after searching and finding some trivia, you see that same long-dead general mentioned again. You think that somehow these things are being shown to you because they're trying to fulfill your goal and the thing that you're searching for. The reason that you search for the first thing and the reason that you search for the second thing include a unifying factor between these two seemingly unrelated things. But in actuality, Google found both of them because they were both popular. Richard James Hart was originally something or another Capone. He invented that name. He chose it. And there were reasons why he chose it. It's not that those two people are being shown to you to fulfill some dream that you had that may be on your dream board and that you've manifested into this reality. In reality, everyone is being affected by a third cause. General Pershing had a cool name and went down in history as a cool dude because he did a ton of really interesting things with his life and had a very interesting name. Similar to Two Guns Richard James Hart. You don't get a cool nickname like that listed in Wikipedia or mentioned in popular culture unless you did something pretty cool to earn it. They were all influenced by the same desire to achieve the same objectives and to look or sound cool or be knowledgeable and effective in this world. In the future, we think that something in the present is influencing the world to make things pop up. In reality, what's influencing these things to pop up now are things that occurred 50 and 100 years ago that are only coming to fruition today. In summary, what you'll find is you'll have more of these feelings of serendipity the more you use Google or voice recognition. Half-Life 3. There's a meme that makes fun of this called the Half-Life 3 confirmed meme, where you just choose random things and then say those random things share very well. Half-Life 3 confirmed is a catchphrase associated with the rumored announcement of the 5th installment in the popular Half-Life franchise, developed by Valve. As an example, Half-Life 3 has the number 3 in it. Gabe Newell runs Steam. Steam made Half-Life 2. Gabe Newell spoke 3 times this year. He didn't speak 4. He didn't speak 5. Therefore, Half-Life 3 confirmed. You just make those abstractions larger and larger to the point where, yes, if you're willing to count the letters in a word and you use first names and you presume relation to some other factor, then Half-Life 3 confirmed. The 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. The 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, also called Bacon's Law, is a game where people pick an actor and try to connect them to another actor through a movie that both actors were in. This process is repeated while trying to find the shortest path that leads to a movie with Kevin Bacon in it. If you're willing to make very loose connections and count them as significant, then almost everything in the world is only 6 degrees away from everything else. If you're willing to take any single thing and count all the things that touch it, and then all the things that touch those, and then all the things that touch those, and do that 6 times, you end up with all the things that have ever existed. It's probably less than 6 degrees if you accurately count all the connections between one thing and another thing that are possible. Everything in the world might be joined by 4 connections. We are effective pattern-finding machines with the power of Google and other advanced search tools that are always going to give us an interesting result and pre-select what we're going to find interesting, because these tools monitor what other people are clicking. They generated the list in the first place by charting human understanding of what is important for certain keyword searches. They know because they count how many people point to that page with the anchor text of what we've searched for. Are you your DNA? In an interview with Craig Venter, he states that you can make a photo of a person from just their DNA, turn their DNA into their voice, and know their age, Only a few years ago, he would have told you some of that was impossible. If that's accurate, and it likely is given Venter's reputation, then anonymity is over. Even if you try to not have your DNA sequenced, we're leaving DNA everywhere all the time, and it can't and shouldn't be protected by law. There's no advantage to not being sequenced. You're just giving the world less of a head start on doing the things that might save your life. Cellular longevity. Keep in mind that repair components are eukaryotic cells, and they have two built-in rules that are important here. 1. Any individual cell, once X energy passes through them, they senescence. 2. From the ovum you grew out of until the last cell alive when you die, only 128 cell divisions happen in that line. That means there's a finite supply of these repair components, these cells, so there is a limit to how much energy can go through your body before you die. Therefore, you probably want to make sure peak effort in any reasonable time interval, for example a month or a week, is pretty high to encourage the machinery to remain well maintained, but average effort is as low as possible. You should exercise with a huge amount of effort for maybe 10 to 15 minutes per week. Sprinting, for instance, getting your heart rate up to 130 plus and keeping it up for a short while, maybe 20 to 30 minutes, no more. Other than that, you should probably avoid exercise and eat healthy. There are other reasons gym workouts are not the best forms of exercise. It's just not very natural. Running or biking in the real world, aside from being more fun than in a gym, is also a lot better for you. And probably having a weekly game of basketball is far better than that. Medical research pays better than preventing low probability extinction level events. The difference between working on extinction level events and working on longevity is that longevity is guaranteed to give you dividends, guaranteed to have a payoff at some point, perhaps even by accident. Working on extinction level events is not guaranteed to make you prepare very heavily for an asteroid strike, and when it doesn't occur, you retask for asteroid mining. All you may end up with is a lot of effort into something that was entirely a waste and didn't work. Most of your body gets worse and never better without science. Your joints, teeth, lung capacity, and strength only diminish over time. Your hair moves from the top of your head to out your ears and on your back. When you have a compelling reason to use soap on your scalp and shampoo on the rest of your body, you'll know what it means. Epigenetic differences. A lot of people talk about how stress in the body, like for instance adrenaline being commonly present, might addict the child to adrenaline. Coolness of nonchalance. Some people think they are cool and not needy because they're down with death. They don't realize that every minute drawing breath is a giant screw you to the grim reaper. They're just as uncool as the rest of us still breathing people. Naming overhead. A few centuries ago, kids were not given names until they reached about 5 years old. Perhaps this is because young children died so often that to name them early could be a waste of time and only increased the grief. Treat causes instead of effects. As Benjamin Franklin once said, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Correct action is difficult and requires quality data. These are things people need to know. If you don't know them, you can't make good decisions. Some of the most powerful, intelligent people in the world that you meet don't know this. How can you expect them to have correct action if people don't realize that curing cancer is only worth 3 years? How can they come to the conclusion that increases in lifestyle may get you 3 years? This means that if you did a marketing campaign for fitness and diet, you might do better for mankind than curing cancer. That sounds ironic and is hard to believe. You wouldn't know that unless you knew the statistics. Curing cancer only gets us 4 years. 40% of people die of cancer, which is an interesting statistic. If you cured cancer, cured it, eliminated it, and it no longer existed, how much longer do you think people would live? A newborn child is born into a world where cancer doesn't exist. How much longer is he going to live? The answer, 4 years longer. Curing heart disease only gets us 3 years. If you cure heart disease, you also only get 3 more years of life. Mathematically, if you cure both cancer and heart disease, you get 7 more years. Anti-aging tech. Anti-aging technology that could make you 30 again when you're 50 gives you another 20 years to win at life. That's great. That's fabulous. People have this belief called the Tithonus error, which is named after the Greek myth where Tithonus wanted immortality. He gets tricked, and he gets to be immortal, but not youthful, and becomes more and more physically deteriorated. He has a horrible life, but he's still alive. Turns out that real longevity research doesn't work like that. Once you become frail, you're screwed. We can maybe prevent you from becoming frail for a really long time, if that works. But once you're frail, we can't really help you. Longevity research. Why does SciVive mention the Tithonus error? Because the number of people who are defeatist about aging research is so great and so heavy-handed that you almost want to skip it entirely. If this book was written for a lower intellectual level, you would want to skip it entirely and just make it fit into readers' existing belief structures. We might instead present, let's create the subset of diseases that is most related to aging and then focus on curing those. You get these hidden side effects, benefits that you don't mention. If we're going to cure diabetes, and as a side effect it also fixes something else, it should make us live a lot longer. Most people care about their family, but the vast majority of human beings care about their family, themselves, their loved ones, and their friends, more than they care about random people that they couldn't speak to no matter how hard they tried. Life expectancy. There was a Reddit thread on things that you can actually be happy about that are going on in the world. One of the posts mentioned that we've gained 6 years of life expectancy since the year 1990. That's pretty cool. Anti-aging investment. It could be the case that you should run your anti-aging investment the same way that you care about your life, in that you don't really care if the universe continues to exist after you die, and you're all right with everything coming to a stop when you do. Then you really should only focus on non-extinction level events. The preparation for X events only pays off in the very rare case that an X event actually occurs, whereas the negatives of aging are guaranteed to happen to you, unless you get hit by a bus. Therefore, be intellectually much more interested in doing the things we know are coming that aren't X events. Peter Thiel and longevity. At this point, one of the problems is longevity research. In fact, Peter Thiel spoke about it quite a bit. At a university seminar, he was asked, "What is the technology that you are looking forward to?" He paused for a moment. This was Thiel's answer. "You know, that question is a little bit tricky because if I answer it, basically, I'll be screwing myself out of some profit." Instead, he talked about research on aging. Why is that worrisome? Because it means Thiel is not working on it. So if an internal mental thought process was, I don't want to give away anything here, but I do want to speak about something that matters, then his thought process was, what important topic could I mention that I wish someone else was working on, but I'm not? That was Thiel's answer. It was a compelling answer. It was nice. SciVive is glad he cares. It shows in his funding, and it shows in his interviews. Where does progress come from? If the Sense Foundation's research works out and people live longer, how much better would the world be? The answer lies in where progress comes from. Progress comes from heroes and the accidents they make. People are working in one place, and then this new amazing discovery happens. Sometimes this new amazing discovery is actually the discovery one intended. That happens too. What if the heroes stop dying? What if the heroes stopped dying? What happens to these guys? They get into the swing of things in their 20s, do some great work, and we get about 40 years' effort out of them before they die. But what if they stopped dying? What if the people at the top of their game were still around, innovating for much longer than 40 working years? What if Albert Einstein didn't have to die and just kept working? And what if he wasn't alone? What if the other people whose ideas he built from, and the other people that built off his ideas, were all still alive and working together? You would get a sum greater than the parts. You would get Metcalfe's law. It states that the value of a network is proportional to the square of participants. Or put simply, every time you connect another person into a network and are therefore able to make many more connections, the impact is multiplied and becomes exponential. You would get not only more progress, but better progress and faster progress, because the forefront of technological understanding and advancement keeps rotting and dying. It's a huge problem for mankind, and a pretty huge problem for the person that died. Don't just dream. Dream and do. Don't just dream, but dream and do. Longevity enthusiasts are too focused on an outcome and not on the actions to obtain it. When you focus on what you want, to the exclusion of the behaviors that are required for it, your dreams don't come true. Dreams are only as useful as they turn into behaviors, curing causes instead of effects. If you are able to cure cancer before it develops within you, then you may get more than 3 additional years of life, because whatever you are doing to fix it is going to fix other things that could also harm you. Cures that affect more than just the ailment you are trying to specifically target give you a multiplicative curative effect. Cure cancer? Get 3 years. Cure heart disease? Get 3 years. Fund biotech? Get more than 3 years. Insurance companies. The whole concept of marketing and profit eating a third of the money that goes into healthcare is very tragic. The best outcome for the world of healthcare is for health insurance companies to be dissolved. The state that's already in charge of keeping the humans safe via the military and police, that is, in charge of the legalized violence, should also be in charge of the healthcare system. The countries in the world that get the best outcomes for their citizens in the health arenas and at the lowest costs are the countries that don't lose a third of their budget to useless advertising and profiting by huge swaths of people that aren't doing any healing. Corporate executives and marketers can neither prescribe you anything, nor cut out a tumor, nor set a bone. Those people are just leeches on the system. Let them go find more honest and gainful employment by dissolving their industry. Insurance companies don't keep clients long enough these days to care about their long-term longevity. Research for children. If we're going to be fast and lose with our claims, arguing publicly against medical research and progress results in the deaths of children. The things we work on help all humans, young and old, so no matter how hard we might try to focus on just aging things, the work we do will help some children as well. Thus, in effect, you're arguing for dead kids. Nearly all medical research ends up being useful, one day or another, in saving the lives of children. This progress is going to be made whether you argue against it or not. When you're dead and rotting, those of us still around will continue making progress in medicine, and at some point, whether we intended or not, we'll live longer. The only question is it better to have it faster to help our loved ones, or to watch our loved ones die before the tech exists? If you want to die early, go by yourself. Don't ask the rest of the world to join you. We have famine, war, and poverty. Which one of those killed 100,000 people today? If you support the idea that it's better for humans to die earlier instead of later, then you should be overeating and not exercising because it will assist in bringing death to you sooner. Think of all the ways you land on medicine as the correct path. Tired of spending money on old people? 90% of the healthcare budget? Kill them or heal them. Which do you prefer? What about people who might just get there soon? Should we kill them before they start racking up the healthcare bills? If you must group people and label them, better you label them by profession than race. Profession over nationality is good as well. What has more of an effect on what you know, what you do, and how you think about things? The work you do for a living, or the location of your birth? Wow, the longest living people are dying off and have negative population growth because not dying is only valuable linearly, but childbirth is valuable geometrically. Working on aging doesn't make you immortal, and it doesn't stop death. It just works on aging. Working on aging doesn't pay quickly. It only pays very slowly over time. If you did it perfectly, you would only add about 1 extra year per year if you didn't die from the non-aging related things. The invisible cocked gun. You saw a man walking around town with a bicycle helmet on. In this case, a very special bicycle helmet. This helmet had a firearm attached, firing directly into the wearer's head. You'd have to ask the person why they would wear something that was supposed to protect them, and then defeat the purpose by having something that was supposed to harm them sticking right through it. So imagine you ask this man, "Why are you wearing such a dangerous helmet?" and receive this response: "Don't worry about it, I know it's there, but it's better to live my life not worrying about it. The trigger only pulls very, very slowly. I know it will kill me one day, but that day is very likely far in the future. As long as I don't get hit by a bus or killed by something else, it's better. I want to live my life how I want to live it. My ancestors all died from headshots from these types of helmets, so it's quite normal. I don't wish to be missing out on life by trying to find a way to get out of this trap, so just leave me alone." How many great people have died the same way their parents have? You see a parent destroy a life with alcohol, and then you see the offspring do the same. Why is it so hard for people to put up a fight against something that is so obviously going to kill them? We all have invisible guns pointed at our heads, and the triggers are being squeezed slowly. Some things we do shake the triggers dangerously. Some things relieve the pressure on the trigger a bit. Some of us put up a good fight against inevitability. Others, not so much. Learn from others' mistakes. Everyone's invisible gun helmet is a little different. They seem to be handed out at birth, like a combination of your moms and dads, just like you yourself. Some people have long trigger pulls. Some have hair triggers. Some fire a bullet of such a low caliber that you can survive the first shot, maybe even the second. Since the gun is invisible, you have to figure out what yours looks like by the effects your parents had on them. Know thine enemy. Know thyself. How did your parents die? Their parents? Now fight. Do not die like they did. Put up a fight. have the courage and responsibility to die with a fight and not a whimper. We're lucky enough to have the tools to actually put up a great fight these days. Life expectancy over time. Aging populations. There are aging populations worried about losing their perceived former greatness, and they think that importing all kinds of new blood within the borders of their country is the path to greatness. They also want to have some backs to load the weight of their aging population on top of. If they were slightly smarter, they would learn from Apple and America's example. You can take all of the profit from a business and all of the excellence from a business and leave the slavery and marginalized working for free and danger and pollution in someone else's country while you get to keep all the profit and intellectual property and get farther ahead to the point where you are the most profitable consumer products company in the world. You not only don't get any of the pollution from the manufacturing, you can externalize all the costs of destruction to the earth, and you can have below market wages that would be illegal where you operate. You don't even have to bring your profits back either. You can leave your profits outside the country as well and let them grow tax-free. Numbers worth fighting for. SciVive would like you to consider this original math. For every day you extend the average human lifespan, you get an extra 270,000 entire human lifespans out of it because you're applying that across 7.5 billion people. This example used an average health lifespan of 70 years. You're getting at least 250,000 extra entire human lives out of increasing the average human lifespan by a single day. That's worth fighting for. Cryonics. What if cryonics started working? Cryonics is weak, only because they're quite terrible at it currently, and if the tech appeared to put you back together after being frozen solid, then the tech could also exist to make mass copies, edits, and remixes of you. Biology is the future. The most precious commodity in this universe is human consciousness, and the only place we are aware of it is in the human mind. In a speech by Paul Graham, who was talking about the book he wrote called The Hard Thing About Hard Things, he says that the future is where biology meets information, which is funny because all biology is information. Every single living creature that we are aware of in this universe is merely executed code in the language of DNA. No DNA, no life. He isn't the only one to feel this way. We now have Human Longevity, a San Diego-based venture launched in 2013. Its goal is to build the world's most comprehensive database on human genotypes and phenotypes, and then subject it to machine learning so that it can help develop new ways to fight diseases associated with aging. We have Calico, a research and development company whose mission is to harness advanced technologies to increase our understanding of the biology that controls lifespan. In 2015, $500 million went to synthetic biology startup funding. There's a conference in San Francisco, and there's a synthetic biology startup accelerator headed up by Bill Leo in Cork, Ireland. Google also has X Development, which is concerned with moonshot ideas. X Development, formerly Google X, is Google's semi-secret research and development facility and organization, which has its headquarters about 1.5 miles from Alphabet's corporate headquarters, the Googleplex in Mountain View, California. Work at X is overseen by entrepreneur scientist Astro Teller as CEO and captain of moonshots. The lab started with the development of Google's self-driving car. Y Combinator is an American seed money startup accelerator launched in March 2005. It has been used to launch over 2,000 companies. The company's CEO, Sam Altman, started their own moonshot team and funded their first synthetic biology company. The tides are turning so that we will have the tools that we need to save our very own lives. What we need. The availability of microchips and electrical components in the 1980s allowed Apple to get its start in a garage, and so must the tools to improve our own bodies be available at home to get the same type of experimentation and progress. When we can tinker with biology the same way that researchers love to tinker and engage with electronic gadgets today, we will see an explosion of innovation and progress. What do we need? We need more people becoming researchers now to create the products within the next 10 years, to go through the FDA for 5 or 10 years, to be ready in 20 years when you actually need to use them. If we work on saving people who are already old and doing more of what we already know, it may not save you, but it'll save your children. If we work on getting safer from Russians, it won't save you. It won't save anybody. If you work on making the world a better place by improving the economy, that's like trying to suck researchers through a very small straw. You can make fewer people have to drive taxis, so now there's fewer people wasting their time driving cars, so now those people can flip burgers, and the burger flippers can become secretaries, and the secretaries can become researchers, and then somehow you might get a brilliant researcher out of the deal. That's ridiculous. Let's get great progress directly. And if the world gets better in the meantime, which is likely, that's fabulous. But let's not pretend that we're curing people's diseases by making cars run better, making paint last longer, or any other way than curing the disease. SciVive believes the following categories are the most important to care about. Biologically related things. Processing artificial intelligent things that allow us to do biology better. Machines and imaging and diagnostics and science. Material science that allows us to do things in biology better. Things in those areas, along with computing, electronics, and intelligence theory, those industries are very likely to help. Young ones making a difference. Who do we care about? We care about everybody, but we care about them at a different time. Do we care about students? Yes. In 20 years, students just getting out of college can start to make a difference. Wouldn't it be great if we didn't have to wait 20 years? How would we shift those productive discoveries 15 years earlier? By not injecting information into somebody that has such a long time before they hatch. Effective altruism. Effective altruism is a philosophy and social movement that advocates using evidence and reasoning to determine the most effective ways to benefit others. Example: the cost of a guide dog for the blind is $42,000. As an alternative, the cost of performing surgery to correct trachealis, the blinding stage of trachoma, often costs as little as $40 in developing countries. This surgery is 80% effective. Therefore, sight can be restored to 840 people for the cost of one guide dog, and the guide dog does not restore sight. One need not be a billionaire to have no idea at all what is going on in other people's lives. To live in a bubble is more the rule than the exception. Although some suggest everyone should delete Facebook, let's be fair to Zuckerberg. If the people on Facebook were better, Facebook would be better. Many of the problems of Facebook come from the problems of the people on it. Sadly, Facebook seems to amplify these problems by optimizing for time on site, making hidden decisions about what you see and what you don't. A billionaire trying to make the world a better place is usually better than a billionaire who is a greedy bastard. There's surely exceptions. It's not the status of a billionaire that's important per se, but the quality of their charitable endeavors. Connecting the world is just a tactic, a means to an end. Advocating for better ends is superior. Sometimes people take the power you give them and do worse. Technology on its own can be used for good and bad. You must advertise hard for the good if you want the good to manifest. In the end, if the world deleted Facebook, it would be far better off than any charitable deployment of funds the Facebook founder could make. Creating SciVivers. SciVive as religion. The world needs more SciVivers. The more SciVivers there are, the happier and healthier we all shall be. Life is quality multiplied by quantity. Quality is far into diminishing returns. Quantity can be multiplied tenfold. The best in their fields die right when they're most useful. What would Edison, Tesla, Franklin, Bell, Feynman, etc. be producing currently if still alive? Since quantity is the hardest problem we are aware of, how shall it be attacked? By charity? Let's be serious. Look around yourself right now. Point to the things charity created. Now, cease the futile exercise. Solutions. Number 1. Marketing as Bill Gates does. However, all lives are not worth the same. You, your kin, your friends, they are worth more. Fund the research that saves them. Do not dream the silly dream that all lives are worth the same. Number 2. Profit, not charity. Take a look at osfund.co, Human Longevity Inc. Sustain and grow instead of using charity until running out of runway. Number 3. Longevity Fund, or Save the Humans Fund. You can buy the S&P 500. Why not the biotech index minus the companies solving problems you won't have? Reduced malaria drug allocation, increased cancer, and heart disease. If you survive malaria, you are still going to die of cancer and heart disease. So let's work on those 40% killers. Number 4. First book, Personal Excellence. Things you can do to SciVive. Get rich, be loved, and live forever. If selling ideas is good enough for Bill Gates, for example gatesnotes.com, givingpledge.org, it is good enough for me and you. Spread the word. This genre seems easier to understand. Number 5. Second book. Things that are important, however, they are rarely actionable in your personal sphere of influence. Politics, currency, voting, economics, geopolitics, environments. These interesting yet unactionable for the common man topics. 15 ways to fix the world. Number 6. Biotech/SymBio startups. Number 7. Popularity improvement, aka The Martian, whereby science and tech are portrayed as heroic. The world needs not hero worship. Let's make heroic the things that actually work these days. We need 20-year-olds in school now, learning for 5 years, creating for 2, and getting their approvals through FDA in 5 years. It could be as long as 17 years before these new scientists can directly help you. How many humans can you heal? Can you save yourself and your family? Get rid of the old and institute the new. Wealth, power, and domination. Fill your mental environment with what you want to become. If you think about baseball all the time, instead of sales and pricing, you are going to get better at one and worse at the other. That is a funny thing about being human. If you learn a fact but you don't use it, eventually you don't know it anymore. It's just like fitness. If you get fit and then stop working out, one day you aren't fit anymore. More science, please. If science is so great, and science is responsible for nearly all the awesome things we have now, then why hasn't science become more popular? Why aren't there many science t-shirts? And why aren't there many science songs? And why aren't there many science heroes? Because no artsy-smartsy creative person has gone through the effort. Until science has cheerleaders and sports teams and songs, why would you want to join the science club at school? The science club is not getting you laid, and the science club is not getting a suntan and banging shots on Daytona Beach during spring break. We're kind of programmed for that type of state change to be favorable to us. If you want science to start outperforming other things, then you better start meeting the needs people have that science doesn't seem to care about. Science cares about truth and learning about the real world. Human beings, not so much. It will never be considered a success if it doesn't increase the number of people who see medical progress and science as something good to do. Increase funding, make better career decisions, and establish an unconscious weighting of human behavior that puts healing the fellow human first. It will also be carrying your family medically and yourself medically. If one were forced to make a choice between wealth and survival, good living comes before profiteering. For the religiously inclined, if one of the best things Jesus did for this world was to heal people of sin and heal people of pain and disease, then you might want to learn from his example. If you were given the power to heal your fellow man or yourself, you should feel obligated to do so. For if you don't, that's just an indirect form of suicide. There are some alternative paths that can be sold with longevity as a checkpoint. For instance, if you care about the progress of technology and you want the smartest, most effective, cutting-edge, badass people of the world to not rot and turn into worm food, then to keep producing and innovating, they need to survive. Perhaps not forever, but maybe just a year longer. Maybe that would be great. Science amplifies medicine and much more. Doctors apply what researchers create. Researchers create with fancy computers, machines, imaging, chemicals, compounds, and the like. Lots of non-medical science goes into nearly all the things that the medical industry considers progress. There is no medical progress without general scientific progress. General scientific progress is the tide that lifts all ships. Obviously, we can influence which parts of the science get focused on to be more useful to the medical fields. There's also all kinds of side benefits from great science that improves the quality of life that you just can't get by focusing on medicine alone. You really can't forget the engineers, businessmen, legal systems, and salesmen that allow all these great things to reach you. But if you are making a Rate My Sandwich app, SciVive truly hopes you find a more empowering and fulfilling use for your creative skills. Apathetic about survival. Part of the reason that people don't fight hard enough for life is that perhaps they're not that passionate about life. If you really wanted to sell someone on the idea of survival, perhaps the same things that influence their day-to-day life would work here. For instance, procrastination. Die later, not today.